The Randomness of Nothing podcast listeners. This is your host, Rashad Woods. I've always had stellar guests on this platform. I've had the privilege of having wonderful listeners and guests. Today is the epitome of one of those guests today. He's a very accomplished gastroenterologist, stateside currently from England, and a children's author. He's opened up different medical clinics at acclaimed universities in the United States, and it's an honor to have him on this show. Dr. Peter Cotton, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
Oh, this is up there for me because anytime somebody has a Wikipedia page, right, it always kind of stops me in my tracks, right? Because you're like, whoa, I'm glad to have them on my podcast. You've had two chapters in life and multi chapters. So you've had started medicine in the 60s and then you transitioned to children's authorship. So can we talk about your medical career that you've been in since the 1960s, please?
Yeah, I was very lucky that my career coincided with and was actually jump-started with when the introduction of flexible instruments, the endoscopes, a lot of people are intimately familiar with, having had colonoscopies and stuff. My career was built on that. I was part of the pioneering group in England and then in the United States. So that was really very satisfying. I enjoyed the academic work and teaching and research. I was able to lecture in over 50 countries.
That's amazing.
And that allowed me to make friends all over the world, which has been wonderful. And I continue to travel to some of those places, not necessarily now to lecture, but often to enjoy their beach houses or their golf courses or their wine cellars or whatever.
Sure.
So that was pretty good. But that career finished actually only last year, although my practice finished 15 years ago, but I continued to teach and do research until last year. So that's when I hung it up.
You certainly, that was well-deserved and, obviously well accomplished on your end, and you had every right to do so. The world is obviously going to miss your accomplishments. Your father was a physician, right? So that's how you initially got into medicine, correct?
Yeah, he was a family doctor in a little country village in the west of England at a time when, I went on house calls with him to farmhouses 80 years ago. At a time when medicine was dramatically different. I mean, there were no antibiotics, very few medicines, and I watched him hold hands and reassure people until they died. And basically, it was a good education in what I call doctoring, the holding hands, sitting on the bed, reassuring people, which is still a very important part of medicine, despite the fact that, it's become technically much more complicated.
No question. So, when you talk about those advancements in medicine, obviously, and I'm 43, so I don't know anything but modern medicine. So when you've seen the advancements that have taken places in the medicines and the flexible scopes, which, a lot of people just assume are things that are available for their medical treatment. How did that, when you were first doing your papers and studies, what was that transition like when things had to go from conception stage to thought to approval to mainstream, so to speak?
Well, it was very exciting, and we didn't really have a roadmap because it was all happening under our feet. I was very fortunate in having colleagues at the university in England and then people from overseas coming to join me to sort of try and steer the way. I mean, there was no one before us, so we had to invent things. Not only the procedures, but how to do them safely. And I had a particular interest in making sure that what we did was actually worthwhile. I mean, some of the things were really remarkable changes, but you always have to work a lot and make sure that it's not just a new fun thing, but it's actually a new useful thing, which may sound very easy, but actually clinical research is quite complicated and actually also quite expensive to do properly. So that's been actually probably my main focus, is making sure that what we can do is actually what we should do, and also to make sure that those who do it well.
Absolutely.
Because if some of those things you don't do them well, it's not only useless, but it's also kind of dangerous.
Without question. And I couldn't help but notice that you treated obviously a very royalty as well as celebrities too. And What was that experience like? And obviously, I'm not here to disclose anybody's medical condition, but that's a different kind of client with different type of needs. But at the same time, they still have medical issues like everybody else. So, what was that environment like?
Well, a bit scary, obviously, but the most important thing is just to treat people like anybody
Right.
else. If you start to treat them some other way, it gets risky. Recently, I've been watching a documentary about the Shah of Iran, whose medical treatment was absolutely disastrous,
Wow.
and actually he basically got killed by being told he needed a treatment by a very 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 famous surgeon who
Wow.
actually was famous in another field. He hadn't
Mm.
actually done what he did for ages. So treat them as they are. Now I'll give you a little story, if I may.
Of course.
One royal patient in England I was asked to see, and I went in to see her with the royal physician sort of holding my hand to make sure I behaved
Oh
myself. And I
goodness.
sat down on the patient's bed and held her hand. And there was a sort of shriek behind me from the royal physician because I certainly wasn't supposed to be sitting on the royal bed or holding the royal hand. It was, you know, but I was doing what I usually
Oh my
do.
gosh.
And she didn't seem to mind. And in fact, she was rather pleased with our discussion.
Yeah.
On the bedside table, she had photographs of all the family,
Oh wow.
which were all dogs. So she had a family of dogs on the bedside table.
Okay.
And she said one of them was pregnant, and she said she'd give me one of the
Oh,
puppies,
it's beautiful.
which she didn't.
It was a nice conversation, at
So
least.
that's an easy one, but actually traveling across the world to treat kings, that's a little bit more.
Wow.
That's a bit more scary.
I can only imagine, right? So, I mean, like the access and the security protocols and the procedures and the vetting process. Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, we landed on one airport. There was a limousine waiting by the side of the plane as it landed, and they said, "We'll look after your passport for you, take care of all that." And obviously, I wasn't going to see my passport again until until they were comfortable with me leaving. So
Wow. Oh, so like I mean, it wasn't so much of a we'll look after it as much as well. Everything's done, you can leave. Oh my gosh.
that's exactly right. That's what happened.
Whew. So, do you find out? And this is kind of segue into this, just interesting because I'm so fascinated by your medical career. Do you find different diseases based on location of patient? Like, are there certain issues you see in America versus England versus other countries? Like, whether because of dietary, because of environment, susceptible to certain diseases, inflammations, and things like that.
Well, England that I know well, and the United States pretty similar.
Okay.
We all eat too much, and a lot of people get diabetes and heart attacks and strokes and stuff like that. Of course, if you disappear into the middle of Africa, that's different.
Yeah.
They still have some major infection problems,
Right.
and poor and so yes, those are different.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't personally worked in those conditions, except very, very early on. I did 6 months at a medical school in Iran
Oh
um,
wow.
on my way to Japan, and that was biblical medicine. I were
Okay.
patients arriving on camels with tuberculosis and all
Yeah.
sorts of things which I'd heard about in medical school, but
Yeah.
hadn't had to treat.
Yeah.
So
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's. I just figured I didn't know if when people eat certain things, if certain diets, if certain additives and things in foods, were more susceptible. You are
yeah,
what you eat in America.
well, it's a lot. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theory out there, and you get an awful lot of advice, most of which not based on any sort of scientific studies.
Right.
It would be very nice to know exactly what we should and shouldn't eat. There are certain guidelines, and part of it is not too much, uh,
Yeah.
so-
Right.
which is difficult. Which is difficult because a lot of things are very tasty these days.
No question, without question. I remember one time, I saw a report when they did Kellogg cereal. They brought people that were in taste testing, and they were like, "What happens when you remove the salt from the cereal?" And people said like it stuck to the roof of their mouth, and they couldn't physically swallow it. So you here you are having your cornflakes in the morning, not knowing how much sodium actually contributes to the taste of that. You don't even think about it because they tell you, oh, have a bowl of breakfast, for in milk, and all the healthy stuff, and then it's chock full of sodium, and you couldn't swallow it if you took the sodium out of it, right? You're like, wow.
Well, it's probably better for you to eat the packet rather than what's in it.
That's really exactly. They said literally the group of people literally they were like it tasted like a paste. They're like they couldn't eat it, and you're like, oh my gosh, does that even cross your mind? Why specifically digestive health did you go into? What attracted you to that field of work?
Well, that was just luck, because when I was a student, one of the few staff members took an interest in me, and his interest was in stomach issues, and so I sort of tagged along with him because he seemed to be someone that I could admire, and he became an important mentor. Right. And indeed, he was instrumental in getting me my first instrument, my first endoscope, and was instrumental in me going to Japan in 1971 to see some of the extraordinary things that were going on there, which I was fortunately able to
That's amazing.
To take on and take back to England.
That's absolutely amazing. Are there signs? And I want to transition, to your wonderful authorship career. But are there signs that people should know if they have a digestive health issue that, sort of the warning signs, so to speak, that there's something they need to seek assistance for?
Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you're not enjoying your food, and if you can't swallow completely, or if you spend a lot of time in the toilet, and all, certainly if you see any bleeding, those sorts of things are all very bad signs. But it's usually pretty obvious. Losing weight when you're not trying to. Yeah. Those are very bad signs.
Yeah, I mean, I just like sort of the basic know your body and how you're feeling kind of deal that you need to seek, additional medical assistance. I thought it was great. So you went to Duke University, and now you then went to the University of South Carolina. That had to have been. Had you been in the States before that? Before you had transitioned stateside?
No, I moved from England to Duke.
Okay.
And I was there for 8 years, and built up quite a nice department there. And then my boss there moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and said he was going to be the big boss at the Medical University of South Carolina. Yeah. It's not actually the University of South Carolina; it's different. The Medical University in Charleston. He asked me to transition with him. Yeah. And develop a thing called a digestive disease center, which I had wanted to do for a long time, and a center which involved collaboration between all of the different specialties who can impact on the digestive world. So that's gastroenterologists like myself and hepatologists, but also surgeons and radiologists and pediatricians and oncologists. So we put all that together. So that was the second part of my career. I did that for best part of 30 years here before I hung it up.
That's amazing. That's absolutely wonderful. Now you have you do children's books, and you have What Fred the Snake and His Friends Learned About the Chinese Zodiac and the Great Race. What is that all about?
Well, that's the 10th of my books, and it's the hero of my books is Fred the Snake. Kind of curious to have a snake as a hero in a children's. In retrospect, I might have chosen a koala bear or a puppy or something like that. But it's because when my kids were young, I was telling them what I did all day and showed them a picture of one of these flexible endoscopes. Yeah. And they said, "Oh, that's a snake." Oh, so I made up a bit.
That's cute. Yeah.
I made up a bedtime story about how not to cross the road.
Yeah.
So the first book was when Fred the Snake got squished and mended because he rushed across the road by mistake and got squished by an ambulance, and that was a long story. But anyway, I went through a whole series of books. The reason for the 10th one, which is a little different about the Chinese lunar calendar, is that 2025 was the year of the snake in the Chinese calendar. So
Oh
my
wow.
Chinese friends, which I have many, said, why don't Fred tell us all about the Chinese calendar, which is a very interesting story because it's made up of 12 animals, and the order in which they circulate to cause the years in the Chinese calendar is based on how they competed in a great race. They had to race across the river to the Heavenly Gate to meet the Jade Emperor.
I did not
So
know
that's
that.
the
That's amazing.
story. Yeah, it's a fun story,
Yeah.
and my books are all in rhyme, and we have a wonderful, wonderful illustrator called Bonnie Lemaire,
Mhm.
who lives in Canada. And so that's number 10, and that one seems to be going quite well right now.
That's amazing.
And with your publicity, that's even better. Thank you.
Listen, we certainly do plugins on this show as well too. So if you're mentioning a book or anything that you have, that's one of the reasons why people come on this show. To talk about their accomplishments and second acts, so to speak. And I mean, your first act is one that heavily admirable. So I look forward to reading that to some of my kids. One of my daughters is 6 years old, so I would love to be able to read her a copy of that book.
Right. So if we're plugging, just need to get onto my website, which is petercottontails.com.
Okay.
That's Peter Cottontails, Tales, not
Yeah.
Tiail.
Yeah.
petercottontails.com.
Yeah.
Got a lot about me and all about the books, and you can actually buy signed copies there
Oh,
if you
really?
want to. And I will tell you something special.
Yeah.
There's a 20% discount in February. So you
Nice.
better pick
Yeah. There's like
the end, the end of.
there's like 4 days left in the entire month. I definitely am gonna check that website as well as have a link for all the listeners who want to purchase that book. You've also done other books as well too. So you said that's the 10th. Are there different? Is that the only series of them that you've had, or are there different characters of books that you've written?
Well, they evolved a little bit, but they all have Fred in them
Okay.
as a lead. And he moved on his own to start with, and with a boy, and he went to school. But then he got a bit lonely, and he invited Jungle Jim to come and visit, and brought in some more animals. So he had a bunch more animals.
Yeah.
And then they went to the beach and they went camping. And at that stage, I introduced a couple of young people, a boy and a girl, who happened to be my grandchildren, Purdy and Jack.
Beautiful.
And so they joined the troop,
Yeah.
and they explored the book 7, 8, and 9 of them exploring the United States. They go all over the usual famous places. I'm afraid they missed out on Detroit. I apologize for that.
That's life.
But
I mean, that's the beauty of having 50 states in play. Like you miss one or two. It is what it is. I've been to South Carolina. I've been to South Carolina about 3 or 4 times. It's absolutely beautiful state.
yeah,
I love Myrtle Beach, and so when I didn't realize when I visited down there how actually close Charlotte is basically to the South Carolina border, right? You don't even think about that, right? It's like literally like 30 minutes away, right?
yeah, that's true.
But
So I've enjoyed all those. Those are all, as I said, based on Fred. I did write a few medical books before, but I've given up on that.
like I said, I mean, it's very interesting to see you transition. How was it that I know you're reading stories to your children? You were making tales to your children. That's how you got into children's books. But I'm fascinating how you went from medicine to children's books, right? Like that's just was it like something that
Yeah,
was always in the back of your mind, or was it just like this is what my kids enjoy, and that was a natural progression?
I don't think it was the back of my mind. I've always enjoyed writing because I've written a lot over the years. I always enjoy rhyming too. In my childhood, I enjoyed the rhyming children's books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it wasn't too difficult to transition.
Yeah.
In fact, I was stimulated by my wife when I stopped my medical practice. She said, I married you for life, but not for lunch. So you better find something else to do.
Awesome. That's awesome. I mean, 'cause you were so busy for so many years, and then all of a sudden now you have this free time on your hands, and it's got to be the oddest thing in the world now, right? And so now you're just
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a limit to how much golf you can play and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's how I sat down to write. Now, if you want to know more about that, you could read my memoirs. I did actually publish
wonderful.
my memoirs called "The Tunnel at the End of the Light."
Mm-hmm. Oh,
the
wonderful.
tunnel at the end of the light. As you think about it for a minute, that's sort of something to do with what I used to do with endoscopes. I
Yeah,
used
yeah,
to
I was
shine
thinking
light
that.
into
Yeah,
various tunnels.
yeah.
And in fact, I'm actually just writing a sequel to that right now. I've almost finished it. It won't be published for a few months, called Reflections. So I'm still writing.
That's absolutely amazing. And you have over 900 publications. I saw 30 peer reviewed articles and 10 books. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of what you've dove yourself into, you've been immensely successful at those endeavors.
It's been a lot of fun. It really has. I've been very privileged.
You went, and just briefly, I did want to say that you went to St. Thomas Medical School in London, right? So that is there a difference? And I would have to ask, in medical schools in different countries, is there a substantial difference in England and in the United States?
Well, it's difficult to answer that because, that was 60 years
Yeah.
ago, and things that move on wherever you are. Certainly, I found when I moved to the States 40 years ago, I found things a lot more structured. In the British system, it was all a bit, I was going to say chaotic, that's not correct, but it wasn't quite so structured. You learned by basically apprenticeship. There wasn't too much formal instruction. You
Mhm.
sort of just went along and learned by osmosis. I'm sure it's changed a great deal since then. St
Right.
Thomas has been one of the big medical schools in Britain. It happened to be where Florence Nightingale started her nursing career and started the Florence Nightingale School of Nursing. She was the first, as it were, official recognized nurse after her work down in the Crimea a long time ago. It's right on St Thomas's is right on the Thames River, just immediately across from the Houses of Parliament. It's right
Wow.
smack dab in the middle of London. If you ever visiting in London, go to watch the House of Parliament or go on that big eye circular thing, you're right on top of the St Thomas's Hospital.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I would certainly, hope I get a chance to go over there and be able to see those types of places because I know that all the history behind it, as well as just how beautiful it
Mm-hmm.
looks, and get a chance to see the world. Um, for the purpose of this show, obviously, you don't need me. I ask this of every guest, and I'm very grateful of their time and their insight of their career and their lives. Dr. Pete Cotton, obviously, you listed your website, but where can people find you, your books, your memoirs, and other things about you?
Well, the website is the best place to go. That's petercottentales.com, TALES.com. That talks about me. I have a blog. I write from time, every few weeks about something that takes my interest.
Mhm.
Some of those things are actually being translated into the memoirs book that I mentioned.
Mhm.
Um, that's about enough of that. You mentioned Wikipedia. I haven't looked at that recently. I better check out and see what it
Yeah.
says. Uh,
And listen, I know, like, I mean, it's Wikipedia is usually pretty accurate, right? So people, I know sometimes in the academia world, I'm not dissing it, right? Can say don't check Wikipedia. Well, it's there, right? So like, I'll still look at
yeah.
people's official websites, but it's nice to when you look people up, they say, oh wow, they have the picture, the biography, and their accomplishments listed, and yours is certainly in there. I hope it's accurate, for the purpose of me talking to you in this show, that somebody didn't go in there and fudge something. So. But it was interesting, and it's pretty cool to see somebody I'm talking to has one of those set up. So it's nice to know.
Well, I also try nowadays, instructed by my grandchildren and great grandchildren, to get stuff out on the usual Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, TikTok, and curious places like that.
Yeah.
It's I'm told it's important, but and so I do it. So I'm on those things.
Yeah, it's tough to be a luddite in the 21st century. You know what I mean? Like it really is. You can try to resist, and then eventually you'll find yourself on it anyway, because that's the way everything moves nowadays.
Yeah.
It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure. This has been one of the more fascinating interviews that I've had because, to have somebody with such an interwoven life that traveled across, multiple countries with multiple disciplines and has helped people with and created, helped with infectious diseases and people with serious medical conditions, and then have this second chapter in children's authorship books. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure, Dr. Peter Cotton.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and stay warm down there. I anticipated you having a little more warmer weather down in South Carolina.
Got this big sweater on right now. Doing the best I can.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me on the Randomness of Nothing podcast.